Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and just to bring joy to everybody, we're going over something that I'm sure is going to garner me some hate mail, which is the 11 things the poor spend money on or waste money on that the rich don't. So let's dive right on in. Number one, right on top of the list, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody. Number one is high interest credit card debt. And I want you to get right to this. Debt is when you borrow money for something that is a liability or is a consumable. So if you start borrowing money to eat, right, then there's nothing left and you're just going to be left with the debt. Leverage is when you borrow money on an asset and the asset actually pays it back. So what we're talking about here is debt. And there's nothing worse for the human spirit than end up being indebted. Like, we actually joke a little bit internally that they don't even hide it. When you hear MasterCard, well, who's the servant, right? Who's the slave in that situation? We have the master, that's the credit card. And here we have the folks that are indebted to it, double digits, over 20% in many cases. This is where that compounding interest works against you. And there's an old adage, he who understands compound interest earns it, he who doesn't pays it. And unfortunately, it's compound interest against you when you're talking about credit card debt. There's something that I teach in Infinity Investing, which is a book I wrote, and then you can go to infinityinvesting.com. It's a free membership. But something we teach there, which is called the losing loop. And when you start using debt to pay for your life expenses, it's a grease slide into bankruptcy or lots of pain and suffering. And we even call it the golden cage, where a lot of people that are high earners, but they end up with so much consumer debt, so much debt on things like cars and other liabilities like house, that they find themselves in a situation where we call it the golden cage. They have stuff and they feel like they look rich, but they are absolutely suffering. And one of the biggest culprits is those high interest credit card debts. So that is something that, with all the folks that I work with and all the millionaires and all the people that are very successful, they'll have credit cards, but they pay them off. The last thing they want to be doing is paying double digit interest on it when they could be double digit earning interest on something else. They're going to go out and do that. Number two, and this is unfortunately going to offend a lot of you guys, but glam and personal maintenance. I'll just call it personal maintenance for lack. Spending too much money trying to look pretty, spending too much money trying to look good. And I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men and women. Something that I don't see in a lot of boardrooms is, diamonds and gems and things like that on your nails, expensive, like people spending a lot of money on that type of thing. You just don't see that in a lot of the investment circles. That's not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that a lot of times the poor are wasting their money on things that they don't need to, going to a salon instead of, possibly trying to do it at home, or cutting that back, doing it less, minimizing it, as opposed to constantly trying to impress your neighbor. And that can be like, it's a never ending quest. Like, you could spend thousands of dollars, believe it or not, monthly trying to look good, and all you're doing is throwing your money away. It's not going to give you a return unless you're a model, right? Unless that's something that you're doing as a living, maybe. But for the most of us, I'm sorry, but we're just wasting our money. And unfortunately, it's something that I see a lot more on folks that don't have that money to be spent, and they're putting them behind the 8 ball, putting themselves behind that 8 ball. Number three, impulse purchases. And that, unfortunately, goes hand in hand with number one, right? If I have a credit card and I have a high limit, it's sometimes hard not to want to use that, especially if I have that money available to me. We see it all the time. When somebody gets a windfall, they feel almost like a pressure that they need to spend it. And so when you have access to capital, and it could be that, hey, I have money that got deposited in my account, maybe I haven't paid tax on it, or maybe I have other bills, maybe it's not really my money yet. right? But I have that money, and then I feel inclined to start to spend it, almost like a pressure is, hey, I can go blow it on some things, as opposed to allocating it into investments, paying off debt, and doing other things with it. A lot of times we just impulsively start buying things because God knows there's enough of those opportunities out there to buy things that sometimes we do it. Number 4, and I'm just going to call it food, but realistically it's fast food and eating out, is when I don't have the money, like I'm not a wealthy person and I should be putting that money towards things like paying off debt or investing, and I'm spending it by going out. And I get it. I'm not going to tell anybody not to go out, but I'm going to say do it appropriately and do it where you're with your eyes open. I see a lot of folks who are not in a position, for example, to do doing DoorDash day in and day out, and they don't have a lot of money, but they're paying that extra 10, $20 on a meal for no reason other than, hey, I just want them to deliver it to me. I could understand it if it's your job and you're not able to get out, but then I'd be talking to your employer about some sort of situation where maybe they're paying for the DoorDash or something so that you're not coming out of pocket. But what it does, it escalates the cost as opposed to being frugal about it. And again, I see both sides. I see folks who don't make a lot of money working their katushes off to have money to put into investments so that they can continue to grow their wealth. And one of the things that they're focusing on is not throwing away a bunch of money by going out constantly and getting meals, and also not spending a whole bunch of money on fast food. So I'm just going to call it food. And by the way, like, the amount of food waste in this country, in the United States, is astronomical. I've seen figures as high as 40% on vegetables, 16% on dairy gets thrown away. So it's sometimes just being a little bit more careful about even the shopping you're doing. So you may be somebody who just goes to the grocery store, but you're going to Whole Paycheck, Whole Foods, or you're overbuying. Maybe you're going to Costco and you're a single person and you're just getting too much stuff and you end up throwing it away. I get it 100%, but that's lost money when you're throwing those things away. Number 5, health. And it's not what you think. I'm not going to tell you don't have a gym membership. In fact, I'm going to say the opposite. A lot of poor, what they don't do is go to the dentist. What they don't do is go to the doctor because they're worried about the expense. But it's like there used to be, I think it was Minute Lube. They would say you could pay me now or pay me later. It was an oil company, oil changing company. Like, hey, you could change your oil now and you're going to pay me a little, or you could wait until you have a problem with the car later and pay a lot. And either way, you're going to be paying. You're better off spending money on preventative maintenance, and that goes for your health, that goes for your teeth, goes for everything. Is making sure that you stay up on it. And that's one of the hardest things to do. I get when you don't have a lot of money. I've been there. I know what it is to start diving in your couch, seeing if you can't find some quarters. I remember that vividly. I lived in a studio when I was first an attorney. I didn't have any money. I only had school debt and didn't have money coming in when I was starting up my firm. I remember that like yesterday, and it's very easy not to go to a doctor. It's very easy not to go to a dentist because I could be spending that money on something else. It's very important that you stay on top of this because you will pay at some point, and if you don't maintain your health, you're going to be in a situation where you're paying a lot more. And that is a knockout punch to many people. One of the biggest reasons why we see bankruptcies is health costs. And one of the biggest reasons we have health costs is deferring maintenance on yourself. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're spending money or you're spending time and energy and money on that maintenance, even though it seems like it's the last thing you want to do. Hey, I'd rather go out for a night out. I'd rather go to the movies. Spend it. Make sure that you are healthy. Make sure that you're maintaining yourself and that you're not letting things that may need immediate attention get pushed out. Number 6, I'm just going to call it games and entertainment. Now, some of you guys know that my brother, Rhett Mathis, was one of the lead designers on Forza. So like I always say this, knowing that in my family, I have a gamer, somebody who spent a lot of time gaming. And I'm not going to say don't spend time gaming, but be very intelligent about the amount of time that you are wasting on games and entertainment and the amount of money you're spending. One of the things that blew me away was like Candy Crush, the amount of money they were making on in-app purchases so that you could continue to play, or Fortnite, all these things, the amount of money that is spent in these games. I remember my brother talking about Forza and the amount of money people spent on new cars and things like that inside the game, not an actual new car, but the in-app purchases. And then you look at Netflix, you look at Disney, you look at ESPN Plus and all these services. And I'm not going to say, again, not to do it. I'm just going to say be very careful about the amount of time and money you end up dumping into these things. Be deliberate, because man, it can just absolutely crush you. We see people that are not in a situation to waste time. They could be spending their money or their energies doing other things, maybe a side gig, maybe a second job or whatever, so that they can get themselves out of debt. And instead, they're spending hours and hours and hours on the couch playing games. I get it. I understand it's human nature, but also life isn't about getting to do what you want to do all the time. And unfortunately, if you're poor, that's the last thing you need to be spending your time on. And it sounds horrible, and I'll probably get some people saying, you don't understand. I get it. I get it. But it's about doing the things that you don't want to do sometimes to get yourself out of a situation that you don't want to be in. It's about doing those things that you don't want to do versus I always want to do what I want to do. And if you're in a situation where you are struggling, that's one of those things that you need to cut out. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, right? The other one is tech. And what I mean by tech, I mean the latest tech. A lot of poor people are the first ones in line to get that new iPhone. They're the first ones to get a new laptop. They're the first ones to get the Oculus. They're the first ones to get the new PlayStation. It's absolutely mind-numbing when I look at this and I'm like, I get it. You want to entertain yourself, but it shouldn't be at the expense of your happiness in your life, because you're going to put yourself in a situation that you're not going to be able to get out of, especially not easily. Again, it's about being very careful about the things that we spend our money. It's very easy to be seduced by new technology and constantly be chasing the newest things. I know what it feels like. For a while there, I didn't change my iPhone, I think for 3 or 4 years. People were laughing at me, and I was just like, I didn't want to. I was like, it works fine. Why would I change it? And they're like, yeah. I get it. There's peer pressure. There's all that fun stuff. But if you're not in the situation to afford it, and you'd be better off putting your money in investments, you could afford it at some time. Absolutely. If you do those things carefully and considerately and you plan for the future, then you can be in a situation where you can pay for it. But if the time's not now, again, I see this all the time, especially with college kids. They live at home, they go off to college, or after they graduate, they want to maintain the same lifestyle that they had, and they can't, right? You grew up and you had everything you ever wanted. Maybe your folks were paying for it, and all of a sudden you're in a situation where you have to pay for it. You're not in a position to pay for it. Then you have to do without. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. I get it. But that's one of the things that we always see the poor spending their money on is new tech and chasing the big screen TV. It blows me away as a landlord with we have over 300 properties. We have apartment buildings and all these fun things. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, you're spending $700 a month on rent and you have TVs that are that much money sitting on the wall. What are you doing? Get yourself out of here. You shouldn't be here. Save up that money. Get yourself out of here. Put yourself in another situation. But they'll stay because they're spending their money on things like that. All right. Other than tech, gambling. Oh my God. I live in Las Vegas. All right. Those casinos, those billion-dollar casinos, didn't build themselves because everybody's winning. I'm afraid gambling is a quick way to lose your money. In fact, lottery, the average amount spent, I think it was in 2023, was $17 billion with a B, which equates to about just over $50 per person on lottery tickets. I'm sorry, you're throwing your money away. It's an excess tax. Every now and again, somebody wins. I get it. And maybe that's your mentality to get yourself out of there. Stop it. I've seen people destroy their lives with gambling. I've seen people literally lose their life over gambling. A buddy of mine's in-laws ran out of money. The week they ran out of money, Grandma passed away. She was pretty healthy, ended up in the hospital. She passed away. 2 days later, grandpa died. They had just run out of money by gambling, excess gambling. They blew through about $500,000 of retirement. And I'm one of those person that believes that sometimes you can will yourself to be, I'm done. It was probably the stress that was killing them, but they were just like, I'm done. I blew my chance. They had a retirement and they decided to go chase it. Be careful with that gambling. There is a lottery mentality. A lot of people, that's how they believe they're going to retire. It's not. It's 1 in a million, right? It's 1 in 2, 3, 4, 10 million. I don't know what the odds are, but they're not good and it's not a plan. Put your money into investing. The other thing they do, and we see this here, I can just tell you, you're living in Las Vegas, smoking, and I'm going to put and vaping. The average cost of a pack of cigarettes right now is $8 a pack, $8 a pack in the United States. So if you're doing a pack a day, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money per year. That's over $2,500. What is it? 336 times 8. I wish I could do math easy in my head, but that's a lot of money. That's over 3,000. That's close to $4,000, right? That's a ton of money that if you put that and invested that and you let that compound $4,000 a year, I can just tell you that that's going to be 40 grand in retirement if you let it sit there and compound, right? And you're robbing yourself of that every year. Just imagine that. Hey, because this year I chose to be a smoker, and I know some of you guys are battling with the addiction, try to do what you can to get that. Goes over to that health thing, right? Let's take care of that now. Let's get rid of that habit now. And that money could be your retirement. You did that for 10 years. We're talking about close to $500,000 in retirement by stopping that now and investing that money instead. But that's going to keep you pinned down, and it's going to hurt your health, and it's going to cost you a lot of money in the long run. I'm sorry. I know it looks cool. I was just in Europe. Everybody and their mother is smoking over there, it seems like. But it is a high cost habit to have that, frankly, we're not in a position to spend money on that in some cases, especially if you're struggling. Let's get rid of that habit. All right. Number 10, taxes. And I teach this all the time in our tax and asset protection class. It's absolutely free, by the way. I'll put a link down below. But if you are somebody who's not considering taxes and you don't understand how taxes work, chances are you're overpaying. And I'll use the example of me. When I was 16 years old, I was working for McDonald's. The type of money I was earning, earned income, was subject to federal income taxes. It was subject to withholding. It was subject to old age disability and survivors insurance and Medicare, which is Social Security taxes. Those are huge. They're always hitting us. If you do not understand how this stuff works, then you will not know what to take advantage of. So for example, if I am somebody who is struggling, there's a good chance that your dividend income and your long-term capital gains are tax-free. What does that mean? It means that I could invest in things that I don't have to pay tax on because I make too little money for it to become taxable. And we're not talking like if you're married, it could be $90,000 a year of dividend income or long-term capital gains. That is tax-free if that's what my income is. And so once you start realizing that, then you could start investing in things that are better than if I worked. So for example, if I work a few extra hours, I may only get to keep 70 cents on the dollar. On average, I'm paying about 29%, 15.3% for employment taxes, and then our federal income taxes and our state income taxes, right? So I'm not getting the full return. When I used to make $4.15 an hour at McDonald's, I got hit with all these taxes. If I worked 40 hours, I didn't get $160. I got like $120, right? You're experiencing that too. And just knowing that might get you to start doing that investing, which is what the wealthy do. The wealthy know enough to say, hey, I could make $1 million in real estate and not pay a nickel in tax if I do it right. I could do 1031 exchanges. I could borrow against it. The poor need to understand that as well. And we all need to understand that taxes have a big impact and can be a big drawdown. And 11, our last one, and I'm going to call that trying to look rich. spending money on the name brands, trying to look like you're a baller, spending money on jewelry and things like that when you're not in a position to afford it, and putting yourself deeper and deeper in debt. Sometimes using this, the high interest rate, to try to look like you have money. And what a lot of folks that are wealthy realize is that's a never ending game, and it doesn't really matter. I love the millionaires that drive the pickup truck, that live in a regular house. You never know it, that they have the money, because they have something that a lot of the wealthy don't, which is called enough, right? They realize that they can be happy with the type of wealth that they have because it's satisfying the needs that they have. That's a huge one, is getting out of that rat race of trying to impress everybody. I know in the days in the day of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these social media apps that you want to look like you're living the big life. Don't fall for it. Don't be seduced by that. Make sure that you're looking and saying, what can I afford? You don't need to impress people. Frankly, they're not paying that much attention anyway. Everybody kind of pays attention to themselves. I'll use the analogy of golfers. They're the same thing. Everybody's always nervous about what everybody thinks. Nobody's thinking about you. They're thinking about their golf game. That's true of just about everybody, right? And so don't fall for it. Worry about, hey, what can I financially do to make sure that I am building a secure future, creating a legacy for my family, building up wealth for myself so that I could, because again, there's different types of wealth. Health is one of them. There's financial, there's social, there's all these different types of wealth. There's time, the ability to do things that you want to. And it's just understanding be very deliberate about it. Like, don't sacrifice your time wealth for your social wealth. In other words, don't spend a whole bunch of money trying to look like you're wealthy and then not being able to do the things that you want to do. And so those are the 11 things that the poor waste money on that the rich don't. Hopefully it's helping you. Maybe you could share it with somebody that you think might need that message. Like and subscribe. And if you have any comments for me, or you think that I missed any, put them down below. If you want to take issue with anything I wrote, I welcome that as well. I do read the comments and I do respond. So if you put those there, you might be surprised at the response that you get. Thank you for checking out the 11 things the poor waste money on that the rich don't.